guys, it's Talisha, and today I'm going to be showing you how I plait my horses for competition. This will not include the forelock or the tail. I will do separate videos on both of them because I just wanted this to be a really in-depth video on what I do for the mane. So first I will go over everything I use for braiding. One is of course a brush. I like a big thick brush like this as I find it detangles manes easier. Then I use mousse instead of a spray. This is just human mousse and I find it the best way out of every other spray. Then of course some braiding bands. These are just to suit your horse's mane colour, so make sure you pick them accordingly. Then I have my thread, scissors and needle. This is for the second half of my braiding. This is a thick needle. I use a thinner one typically. Then I have this little pouch. This isn't necessary, but I find it very handy. It comes with a comb. One of these little doohickeys, whatever they're called, I use them so much. And then the little clips, which I also find handy. So that's everything I typically use. First of all, I start off by brushing her mane out. Pretty self-explanatory. I then separate her mane. They say an uneven number of braids is what you want. I typically don't really care. I don't get marked down in dressage or anything like that just because of the number of braids I have. I just want it to look good. So I separate it using this thing. Still don't know what it's called. I do like 1 and 2 sections of it. So like 2 of the gaps and 1 whole thing. And it typically adds up to 3 of my fingers width per braid, which I show here. So now that all of the sections are done, I am on to braiding. And I believe I got about 12 plaits, I think, this day, around that. So you can use the clip just to keep the rest of it out of the way. I typically don't, but you can. Then I take out my mousse and put a bit of mousse mainly in the top of the mane because that's where I get all my flyaways. And then I spread it down to the rest of the mane if I have enough to do that. I find mousse so much better than sprays. I find it gives a neater finish. I then separate the mane into 3 sections and start plaiting. I always plait over the right section first, so it's always the one that goes over the top first, and I make sure that every single plait is done the same way so they can look as even as possible. So this is just how I plait. I mean, you can pretty much see in the video. If you don't know how to plait, this is how I do it. I've slowed it down a bit so you can really see, and then I speed it up until it's all done. So I try to keep it as tight and neat as possible. You don't want flyaways because then it'll just look messier in the end product. I then band off the end, and then that's 1 plait done. So this is the next one. I'll show you twice just so you can get, another little view of it. So again, separate into 3 sections, and you want them as even as possible. Then start plaiting, right side over the middle first, then the left. And I am very particular on how my plaits start because if the top of your plait is loose or messy, it's just the end product will be loose and messy. I'm very particular with how neat my braids are. I've been doing them. I've taught myself how to plait as well from YouTube videos, and this way that I'm doing is pretty much my own version of a bunch of other mixed up versions, I guess. I then band off the end, so I fold over the end of the plait and just band it up. You can see the end product in a second because this just again makes it look neater. So they are all folded up and done, and now I'm on to sewing. So the typical horse needles is like this pink one, the quite thick one, but I typically like using a normal sewing needle because I get a lot neater job, but I wouldn't be using this if you aren't experienced. So here I'm just knotting the end of my thread. I do 2 knots on top of each other just to make sure it's a big enough knot. And then I measure out my thread. So here I do, a bit more of a arm length type thing, but this was more than enough for me. I would always go more than needed, but I typically use less than that, but I'd go more when you're learning. So I then put the needle through the end, make sure it's through the band, and I pull it straight through until the knot reaches the band. Then I go through the underside of the braid, pull it up, so it is right up there. Then I go through the base again, just a bit higher, and then I go back through again in the middle, and then I finish it off by going through the top. Now, this is probably longer than some people's versions, but this is how I get the neatest braids and how I personally like doing my braids. May not be the quickest way, but I find it the neatest for me personally. I taught myself, I just kind of picked up a bunch of other tips, but it works for me. So then you go through the base again. I make sure I go through the band this time too, just because then it keeps the band in the middle of the braid, well, the little bobbly thing when it ends up, and then it doesn't stick out the side. I then go through the right corner of the braid and then I go through the left, coming through the bottom. This just holds it in place, and then to finish it off, I will then go through the middle, and this just keeps it really secure. I've never had any of my braids ever come out. Even if they've been left in for a couple days, they don't move. I swear by my technique, have never had anything go wrong with them, and I've been doing it like this for about 2 years, and I've never, as I said, had any come out. Then I tie them up, just do a knot, pull it up, and then I do another 1 or 2 knots just to make sure they are absolutely secure, and 3 for good luck. I then cut the thread, make sure it's not too close to the knot because it could come undone, but just enough to make it neat. So here I show you again just from a bit of a different angle, and I'm about halfway through the mane now. So I'll run you through it again. I go through the band, up through the bottom base of the braid, pull it up so it tucks the tail up, then go through the base kind of end of the braid, pull it through, go through the middle, then go through the top, then go through the band and the base again to then get your final little bubble, or whatever you want to call them. Pull it up, which then sucks it all up into a little ball. Then I go through the right side to secure that corner, pull it through the left side. I'm sorry you can't really see it as well from this angle, but I'm sure you get the idea now that I've shown it twice. Pull it up, go through the middle to then knot it up. Me just getting flyaways. Grab the other end and tie it up 3 times. Go again. This is why, see, these needles aren't blunt like the other ones, so why they should only be used when you're very confident, because you can stab yourself and your horse. I never have, but you just want to be on the safe side if you aren't confident with them. Cut it up, and then that is the finished product. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope this helped you. If you want to see how I braid the forelock and the tail, comment below and I will try get them out as soon as I can. Alright, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in a couple days for a vlog. Bye!